We are live for the Lever Up Your Life show where I bring on guests to share their strategies and secrets for leveraging their knowledge, resources, and contacts to lever up their lives. And I have the perfect guests to talk about how to do that on today's show. So Ryan Wall, welcome. I think my first repeat guest.
Repeat. I was just going to say this second time.
Well, we had to do one business for the first time with Hello Home Inspection, and now number two for the second business, CXR. And let me just say, for anyone tuning in and listening, this is super relevant for me because I'm on buyer number 3 for my pending sale, and we're literally chatting like nuts and bolts of how to save your sales that are pending and get them to the finish line. Specifically in regards to repair addendums, what that looks like. Ryan, how many? Over 1,000 transactions that you and your team have essentially helped get to the finish line with inspections and repairs?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. We're doing somewhere around 1,400 inspections a year right now. And more of those are either pre-listing inspections or helping agents kind of on the back end when they're on the listing and selling side of the property.
So there you go. Let's just say conservatively 3,000 times you've done this. So you know a thing or two.
Sure.
Let's just start it off with like the backstory of Hello Homes has really like become established as, dare I say, the number one home inspection company for sales in Tampa Bay. Certainly, probably the most well known. And going from that and then diving into this other space with CXR. So share with me the background on that and what problems you're solving for investors and homeowners in general.
For sure. Yeah. So Hello Homes coming up on 5 years in Tampa, which is crazy how much time has gone by. Really blessed to be able to, work in the city and build all the relationships that we have along the way. But yeah, so I would say, pretty early on in that journey of doing home inspections, we started to see the pain points that come with real estate transactions. And obviously when you're a home inspector, you're seeing one side for the most part of every transaction. Every time you interact with an agent or, the client, who our client is on paper is technically the home buyer. You're always on the purchase side of that transaction. And so, you're the one telling them what's wrong with the seller's house. And then from there, we really don't see like too much of the interaction after that. More and more frequently, we started getting called back for like repair verification or re-inspections, whatever you want to call it, where, we produce a report, the seller would make repairs, and then we'd go back. And it's hard to put an exact number on it. If I had to ballpark it, at least 50% of the time, the repairs were either not done or they were done incorrectly. And for us, that's kind of frustrating because it's like, hey, I feel like we've wasted our time, the client's money. We've just caused another road bump in the transaction, and it was just getting really frustrating. And so we tried to tackle it, from a few different angles. There was like, how can we write better reports that are harder to mess up for the seller? If we're very clear about how something should be fixed, it's going to be hard for somebody to mess it up that's fixing it. But
it's like, how do you make dummy proof instructions to a random contractor that you don't know to fix something, basically?
Exactly. And we're not naive to the fact that there's layers of like a contractor is probably not going to look at some home inspector's report and be like, yes, I'm going to do it exactly that way. Right. Everybody thinks they know how to do everything the best. So we just got like really frustrated about like, it just feels like we're wasting everybody's time. And bigger picture, more importantly, these transactions like weren't going smooth to the point where, we were watching buyers and buyers agents just kind of like give up with the list of repairs. Like, it's close enough. Let's just get to closing. And, sometimes, and for some things that's okay, some silly minor repair that's like, hey, exterior light isn't working. We're all going to get over it. The buyer can change it when they move in. Let's not die on that hill. But lots of things related to, mold problems, plumbing leaks, like truly dangerous electrical, like this, it needs to be taken care of properly. And when it's not, for the sake of like just ease and getting the deal to the finish line, well, it's not doing anybody any favors. So, we spent a couple of years just kind of generally just frustrated at the process. So there's kind of like an interesting piece of, and I talked about this on James Starr's podcast a couple weeks ago, regarding like the Florida statutes and like what home inspectors can't do when it comes to licensing. So I'll read the statute really quick.
Yes, we've all been dying for it.
Love it. 2024 Florida statute. It's in chapter 468, if anybody's a nerd like that. But it says a home inspector is prohibited from performing or offer to perform any repairs on a home which the inspector or the inspector's company have prepared a home inspection report. And then it goes on to talk like some specifics about if you offer warranty programs and things like that. Sure. So this is where a lot of other states have this little asterisk after that that say for 6 months or for 12 months or for 2 years. In Florida, it's indefinitely. So really? Yeah. So when we produce a home inspection report for a buyer, we can never work on that home again. Like, so if I started any other company or decided that Hello Home was now a repair company, we can't work on that home anymore, which is really interesting. And there's a lot of anywhere from like gray area to overinterpretation. You ask, a lot of people, they'll kind of land on different sides of the spectrum. But we found I specifically felt it was really important to like do things the right way, even if it means, creating a little bit of a road bump or not being able to be as effective as possible. And so, about a year ago, CXR was born. And what it was initially is we were, I had like an industrial client who needed some maintenance done on a bunch of warehouses, and purely out of a liability standpoint, I was like, I just need to create another entity, have it insured properly, all of that. Yeah. So that's how it was born. And it was never really meant to be more than that. And over the last year, we've got our plumbing license, our general contractor's license, our mold remediator's license. So we've kind of all like nestled it under this idea of CXR, which is a separate entity. And throughout the process of really figuring out like, what are we good at? What are we passionate about? What are like the verticals going to be within CXR? A big piece of the contracting portion, we wanted to focus on the real estate industry, and like more specifically, the transactions that are happening from the other side as what we've seen with Hello Home for a while. So, naturally as home inspectors, we're always looking for, more business, unique pieces of the transaction to be involved with, but there's only so much you can do. Like regardless of how great of an inspection you perform or how great of a report or how personable you are, your interaction's really limited, right? To like that one day or maybe 1 or 2 days, depending on the complexity of the transaction. And then you're kind of like back out of the scene again. And the buyer probably never hears from you or never needs to contact you. The agent won't, doesn't really need you again until the next transaction. And so we were kind of like limited to a degree on how we could stay involved in people's lives and really in the transaction. And so we started thinking, what would it look like to get involved on the other side? Because every time a buyer's agent is not actively a buyer's agent, they're probably on the listing side of a different transaction.
Yeah. I mean, they're probably not doing a deal, but if they are, the other side of the transaction.
And so I was like, hey, how can we like continue to serve these agents who have like got us 5 years down the road with Hello Home inspections from the other side? Because we always hear the same complaints, like, hey, one, can you kind of help us write this repair addendum based on the inspection report you did? No problem. Like here's like some recommendations on how to like write this formally to get the best repair. It's like, but that was always just kind of like on the side, a helpful hand. And then the other thing we heard a lot was, hey, the seller just did these repairs. Do they look good? And it was like, I can go and tell you whether or not I think they were done right or look good, but like I have no ability to influence the actual quality of the repair. So, the next logical thing was, hey, we're licensed to do a lot of this stuff now with CXR. Let's help out on the other side of the transaction. And so, what we've kind of done for the last couple months, fairly quietly, and we're, I guess, like, surprise, we're launching this program specifically dedicated to agents who are on the listing side of the transaction to basically, when you receive a buyer's repair addendum that's agreed to, you literally just submit it on our website, and within a couple hours, we'll have you a quote, not just on the plumbing, not just on like the miscellaneous but on everything, the electrical, the roofing, the HVAC, and it's all coming from either internally on our team or contractors that we work directly with.
Yep.
A couple reasons. Like one, you want to get everything in one place. You don't want to go spend hours or days finding quotes, trying to figure out, who do I need to call for this? Who do I need to call for that? It's all going to come back to you on one estimate with all the license numbers that are applicable, reputable contractors standing behind all of them. And then obviously we handle actually doing the repairs ourselves, on behalf of the seller. But the important part, I think, that kind of separates what we're trying to do from, anybody else who would offer like a service similar to this is we're looking at all of this stuff through the lens of a home inspection company primarily.
Bingo.
Right. So I'm sure like you've seen in many deals, the buyer's inspector calls something out. Whether or not it was correct to call out or a big deal or a small deal, there's something in their mind already about like why they called it out and what they expect it to look like if it was to be repaired.
Yeah.
And so like, sure, there is a right way and a wrong way to fix something, but there's also this other layer of, hey, the guy who actually said this is a problem to begin with, what is he expecting on the back end? And so if he gets called back out by the buyer, what's he expecting to see? And how do we make that process, as smooth as possible? So, a great example, there's all these little things, especially when you talk about the floor to 4-point inspection and all of that, where there's all these little things that are seemingly like small, minor repairs that a lot of contractors, and rightfully so, will say, that's not a big deal. Don't worry about that. Like, don't even do that. It's not a big deal. Or they'll over-engineer it and do too much or whatever.
Yeah.
And we're looking at those repairs like through the lens of an inspector saying, if I was the inspector on the other end of this, what would I expect the repair to look like when we're done?
Yeah, this is, dude, this is so valuable because I think of, and I went through this myself, right? I'm actually a great case study in that, like, I have a home that I'm selling right now. I'm not doing the repairs on the buyer side, but y'all have been involved in that deal since the start and are continuing to help. And versus my first transaction where like we went through the repair addendum, and honestly, in hindsight, like, dude, they never really sent the inspector back out. But I bet if they did, they would have been like, yeah, we're still not satisfied, right? Like, I mean, I can almost tell you for sure. But we just got it closed. But it was one of those things where it's like, my contractor told me, oh, we do 4-point inspections on all of our stuff before we're good to go. Like, nothing will show up on your report. But they're contractors, and their idea of like good to go on a 4-point is not good to go on a 4-point. So I think even in terms of a spectrum, dude, you've got like contractors over here and inspectors over here. Like, a contractor will tell you something's good, and an inspector will tell you the little tiniest detail, like this needs to be corrected. So to have now going into a transaction where it's like, hey, the guys that are doing my repair, one, are wide in breadth. Almost anything that's going to come up on a standard repair addendum, y'all can handle all of it in one fell swoop. And I don't have to schedule a bunch of different people to go out. But also, exactly what the inspector is going to want to see on the back end. And by the way, if this cuts a week out of going back and forth on a flip that you're selling or whatever kind of real estate transaction, a week of holding costs, like, I mean, on my deal, that's around $1,000.
Yep.
So it's not trivial. And it also, I mean, a week cut off your time to get out of a deal helps your cash on cash return quite a bit, which you should care a lot about.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
I was going to ask you, Ryan, specifically about the deal that your team is helping with on my property. I know, like, we got the inspection report back, and there's a lot of stuff on there. Like, some of it was valid, like legit. Yeah, that should be corrected. Good catch.
Yeah.
Other stuff was like not really even fixable. Like, hey, the spigots don't work. Yeah, they're disconnected from the water line. Like,
yeah.
So I guess as somebody, from the perspective of somebody who's doing a flip or selling a house, like, how do you even go in and interpret in an inspection report stuff that you actually need to do, or stuff that you need to be like, hey, realtor on the other side of the deal, like, we're not going to do this for XYZ reason?
Yeah. I mean, so much of it's communication, right? On the inspection side, like, we have, as proud as I am as Hello Home Inspections and all the good we do, like, we're not perfect. We will call out non-issues from time to time and get corrected by contractors. It happens, right? We're doing so many inspections. There's no way that everyone is absolutely incredibly as accurate as it can absolutely be. And so what I've learned along the way is communication is incredibly helpful in those situations. So really it only ever goes one of two ways, right? Like, as the inspector, we get the chain of communication back, and it was like, hey, the seller's contractor says you're an idiot and you have no idea what you're talking about, and you should be, disbarred from your license. That's like one side of the spectrum. And there are contractors who we have showed up to do repair like verifications, and they've been on site and they've cussed us out of the house for whatever reason, right? Like, anyway. So like, that's one end of the spectrum. And then the other is, contractors who are very articulate and will call our office and say, hey, I got a work order to make this repair at this property that you inspected. I have your inspection report. I just reviewed it. I just want to verify that, like, this was your intent during this repair, and so that I don't make it right. And those contractors who like make those connections have become like some of our biggest referrals. Because it's just like that, I don't need you to do that. I know you know how to do your job. You're licensed in something. You're probably licensed in something we're not licensed in.
Yeah.
But it's just that little bit of extra communication and, kindness, to be honest. Yeah. That really make the difference. And I think that is a big piece of, like I said, why we're doing this is I've had to call inspectors, under CXR. Maybe I changed my voice a little. It's like, hey, it's Ryan with CXR, just in case. Just be like, hey, I'm looking at one of your inspection reports, and like, I'm pretty confident I understand what your intent was. But like, this is what I'm looking at. And, would you be okay with this type of repair? Is this what you and the buyer are intending to be done? There's just so many hands that these addendums change throughout the process that, things get watered down, things get, misinterpreted, miswritten, any of the above. And, we always want to solve the root issue. We don't want to just put Band-Aids on things. For example, like at your property, right? Like, any other contractor, I can guarantee you, would have gone out there and said, yeah, Jared, absolutely. $125 a exterior spigot. You've got 4 of them. Here's your estimate. We'll go ahead and replace it. They replace them, and the inspector comes back and turns on all these brand new hose spigots, and none of them work.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, well, it's because it was connected to the abandoned well pump that's sitting in the garage. Like, of course it's not going to turn on, right? So, from our perspective, it was, I'm not going to waste your money. I'm not going to waste my time. I'm going to write that up in a very coherent way that when that gets back to the inspector, they're going to be like, oh, shoot, like, absolutely, that makes sense. And I don't look at those interactions as like, man, what a bad inspector that he put that on his report. It's like, he was spending 3 hours, probably 2 to 3 hours there looking at every piece of the home, and he had a limited amount of time to check exterior spigots, and they didn't produce water when he turned it on. Like, it's not as, I was there for an hour doing investigative work before I figured that out. So it's just being kind, treating people with respect. And I think that's kind of what sets us apart here.
I mean, honestly, like, that's something that should be noted regardless, dude. I didn't know you didn't work. Like, I've been to the house a few times. You've been to the house way more than I have. Forget what it looks like. That's a really good point. So this is kind of like a question. I'll be selfish with my questions. More curious for me. Hopefully other people are curious as well.
Yeah.
How often do you see, like, you're probably doing a lot of inspections for buyers on either fix and flip or new building, correct?
Yeah. Definitely.
How often do you see like an inspection report where it's like, everything's good, like, I have no recommendations? Is that just like, it doesn't happen?
I would say, gosh, the last time we had an inspection report with less than 10 items was probably 2 or 3 years ago that I can remember.
Wow.
And I don't know if maybe that was a result of us just being newer and like not being as experienced to dig into all the nitty gritty. It's always going to be, a product of the intent of the inspector too. So I've seen I've seen inspectors inspect, like, for me personally, like me being the buyer client, I've had inspectors come in that I really trust and produce an inspection report that in my mind is a like relatively clean report. but their intent was like, I'm going to find the big things and I'm not focused on the little things or like the menial things. And for somebody like a buyer like me, I'm like, that's fine because that's what I want. That's what I like feel is worth the time and the energy and the because like I can handle the little stuff.
Yeah.
But for other buyers, like, you know, they want to know if the doorknobs squeak because like that's important and they're going to have to hire somebody to, you know, to grease them up. So like it's kind of just
that WD-40 on my doorknobs, baby.
Exactly. But yeah, I mean, it's there's always stuff. It's going to depend inspector by inspector how much shows up. But yeah, I would say like the silly stuff is avoidable, especially as like a flipper or a seller. It's like there's lots of stuff that probably can be taken care of in an afternoon that make inspection periods go so much smoother. And that's probably a whole other topic. But you know, like for example, at your flip, the abandoned irrigation system, right? Like there was probably like a little bit of effort and time that would have went into either just removing the system or like making it more clear that it was abandoned would have like avoided just the confusion up front. But regardless, like it didn't turn out to be a big deal at all. We were able to like diagnose it really quickly and avoid it. So yeah, it's that kind of stuff I enjoy doing. It's like going kind of behind somebody, learning their intent, figuring out, you know, what they really mean, and then ultimately, you know, solve the problem for the seller, which is to get in and out as cheap as possible in the shortest amount of time and make the sale.
Yeah. How often do you see like these repair addendums really blow up a transaction, or somebody gets an inspection report back, they're in their inspection period, or you know, they have a financing contingency or whatever, and they're like, I'm out. I just needed a little ammo to walk away from this deal. Is it like half the time, or is it not all that often?
Not all that often, to be honest. I feel like a lot of the times that an addendum blows up a deal is it's mostly communication related. So most repair addendums, if you're buying a house as a buyer and it's not an obvious like tear down, this thing needs to be gutted, like the home's going to be livable with a bunch of little issues along the way. And maybe there's one big issue. All of that can be fixed. All of it can be estimated, quoted, you know, whatever. It's the way things are like communicated across. One of the first things that kind of drew me into this idea of getting involved in the repairs was just seeing like really poorly written repair addendums, like to the point where it would take a very little issue and like it would get so jumbled up by the time it would get to the repair addendum. You know, it could be like a you know, there's a missing GFI on the kitchen countertop. Like it should be protected. It's not. And by the time it gets written, it's like, you know, correct the unsafe, you know, death wiring that's in the kitchen. And we're walking away from the deal. And it's like, it's okay. It's okay. This is a pretty easy fix here. So it's getting that verbiage right to begin with. For like a number of things, because anytime you write something in a real estate transaction, like to a degree, it's, I don't want to overspeak here. When I say legally binding, like you probably understand what I mean is like, there's an obligation now within the contract for the seller to fix it the way that it's written and the buyer to expect the repair to be done in the way that it's written. And like I said early on, like lots of people just say, whatever, close enough, let's move on. And that's fine if you feel okay about that.
Right.
But getting that wording right early on is, I at least feel it's really important. And maybe I'm like stepping into people's transactions and wanting them to be better. But you know, that's kind of why we started this, is like, let's fix that at the start.
I think that's a toxic trait of high performers in real estate. Like, believe me when I tell you that I commonly feel like I should absolutely not be doing this as a hard money lender. But dude, if I need to be texting the realtor with updates on the loan status to make me feel good about signing an extension, which by the way, I just did this week, I'm doing it. Like if I need to be freaking calling title for whatever reason, like I'm doing it. And like sometimes I don't know if it's good or not, but I'm like, look, I want this transaction to get absolutely crushed. And that means I need to ensure that everybody's doing a good job and I make it as easy as possible on everybody to get this finish line smoothly. Here's another question for you, Ryan. All right. So most transactions, right? You go in, you got your standard inspection period. That's when the inspection report is being done, right? Probably it's back into, well, definitely it should be back into the hands of the buyer before that period is over. But then you still got like this well, the appraisal contingency for the actual financing. So it's like the second window of,
Yep.
Opportunity to potentially bail out. On this transaction, Jordan and I were like, hey, we've had two people walk away from this one and we don't know how committed they are. Like, I don't want to put any time, effort, money into doing the repairs. We can verbally tell them this is what we're going to do. But until we know the appraisal is back and it's good to go and financing is locked in, we just don't want to like even worry about it, because the next person could come along, get a different home inspector who comes up with like, they don't even get half the same stuff.
Yeah.
So what are your thoughts on when is the right time to actually get the work lined up to get knocked out, assuming we're trying to close as soon as possible?
Sure. Yeah, I think there is, and this is a little bit of where just like experience comes in, whether from our side or from the agent side, on like what repairs are going to be mandatory no matter what. And to your point, like even with 4-point stuff, there's a lot of gray area between inspectors. And so what may be a 4-point issue to one may not be to another. But typically it's like that 4-point stuff is wise to jump on pretty early.
Sure.
The rest of it, depending on the cost involved, maybe not so much, but I would say that 4-point stuff, dangerous electrical, actively leaking plumbing, stuff like that. It's your roofing issues. So it doesn't really matter how long you wait. Like it's going to come up again. And it's better just to get it knocked out early.
Got it. So the stuff that's like, okay, for sure, this no brainer, this has to be done before we sell the house, get all that stuff knocked out. The more marginal, maybe gray area type of stuff, probably wait until you know that you got 100% locked in, financing is good to go. You're not spinning wheels for no reason.
Yeah, exactly. And at the end of the day, there's also things that are just like, hey, this may not be a 4-point issue, may not be a big deal, but it was a stumbling block for this buyer. Like, is it going to be the same thing for the next? And even if it's not a big deal, is it just going to make a smoother transaction next time? And that's not to say like, well, let's just renovate the entire house because that'll make everybody feel better. But, there's always those things that are going to be, hey, this is really easily misinterpreted.
Yeah.
And so like, let's just get it corrected now.
Yeah. We're actually, believe it or not, we're starting to come up on time here.
That's crazy. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was just watching it. I'm like, is this an hour or half an hour? Because we're killing this.
Dude, I know.
Yeah.
We were like, we got to make it short enough so that if people want the real goods, they can hit you up.
Love it.
And actually talk business. You can't give it all away, But on that note, we'll give one more thing away here. What is in like the topic of this one is saving pending sales. What do you think are maybe the biggest or some of the biggest things that you see come up that people make a mistake on, either selling a house or on the buy side once a deal goes pending, where things just like don't materialize and it results in the transaction not happening what easily could have?
Yeah, I would say just like the willingness to accept. So I'll talk about this from the seller side, just because that's kind of the position that we're aiming here. I'd say like the willingness to accept that like your property has problems, like every property does. And I think that's really tough for people who have either lived in a house a long time or are, maybe a little handier than most. It's like, on my house, I would be like offended if somebody found something wrong. But at the same time, I know that there's stuff wrong at my house.
Yeah.
And I think, and I think like, especially in a real estate transaction, when you get to like the repair addendum phase, like it's all gloves are off. Like we just need to like get to the bottom of it, be brutally honest and be like, this is wrong. This is how it needs to be fixed. Do we want to fix it or not? And, just being open and willing to that. If it's a conversation about dollars and cents, it's like this repair doesn't make any common sense because of cost to do. Sure. Like absolutely. That may be a reason to, quote unquote, like blow up a deal over, but that's the house that's killing the deal. That's not a person killing the deal. Right. Yeah. And so I think just like being open and willing as a seller, as a seller's agent, like as an inspector, everybody involved, just to be like, hey, this is like egos aside, like, this deal, we can get it to the finish line if we just do X, Y, and Z. And, most problems are a result of human pride. And so I think if we all put that aside for a little bit, then
Amen.
it'll go really well.
Yeah, I'll finish it with this thought on the sellers being willing to accept their property's not perfect. I think this might have been the first house ever in Tampa Bay that I went on an appointment with for a seller.
Yeah.
I just remember him distinctly pitching us on how good the house was because he did all the work on it.
Yeah.
And one of the things that he showcased that he was so proud of was a urinal that he installed himself. It's like, dude, this had so much value. Those are the people that you gotta watch out for. Yeah. Those are the people you gotta watch out for those inspection reports. Like, what do you mean this is wrong? I did it myself. We know.
Yeah, no doubt.
With that, Ryan, where's the best place for people to reach you for either inspection side or repair addendum side? And by the way, highly recommended as someone who has firsthand had him working on taking care of all my repair addendums. Where do they reach out to you?
I appreciate it. So there's two places. If you're already familiar with Hello Home Inspections, we have a link under resources on our website that will actually bounce you over to the repair addendum landing page on our CXR website. So if you're already there, easy to bounce over. If you're looking for just like generic contracting, plumbing, mold remediation stuff, www.cxrsolutions.com. Again, it's the same website that you can get bounced to from Hello Home Inspection. So if you get over there in some capacity, it's easy to find. We tend to work with a lot of like investors and kind of like on more of a work order basis than like emergency work right now. So a lot of our intake is through a form on our website, which makes it really easy to just be like, here's my info, like shoot me a text back and we'll get it scheduled. So.
Awesome. Sounds good, man. Well, it was an absolute pleasure to, you have literally such a deep knowledge of very, very granular stuff that I learned so much every time I talk to you. So thank you for that. I hope everyone tuning into the show today has a similar experience. And that concludes this week's episode of Lever Up Your Life. Thanks for tuning in, guys.
Thanks, man.